Welcome to the Activating Prior Knowledge and Interest, Motivation to Read Content Area Texts. Activating prior knowledge and generating interest create an instructional context in which students will read with purpose and anticipation. In general, researchers have repeatedly found that students' motivation declines as they progress from elementary school through high school. Upper elementary teachers as well as middle school and high school teachers face a motivation dilemma. Teachers will need to be discovering what motivates their students to read and learn. They will need to understand how to reach more students and know what steps to take to develop students' interest and desire to learn, especially in the content areas. Perceptions of ability and the expectations they trigger constitute major factors in current views of motivation. Self-expectations are what students expect of their own behavior, but can be shaped by the expectations of others, especially friends, parents, and teachers. Self-efficacy is the psychological construct that describes an individual's sense of what he or she believes he or she is capable of doing or learning. It is the "I can" belief in self that leads to a sense of competence. Another part of motivation is metacognition. Metacognition describes cognition that has as its object cognitive processes, which is what we know about what we know. If a student has metacognitive awareness, he or she asks, "What do I need to know? How well do I already know it? Do I understand what I just read?" Metacognition is also an important part of study skill instruction, mainly because it helps students decide what to study. Metacognitive awareness also means that students understand what helps them learn. This enables them to determine how and when to study. It involves independent learning, not teacher guidance. The best technique for helping students to retain information being taught is to build conceptual understanding. We remember best material that is meaningful. There are a lot of great strategies that are helpful, but you still need to make retaining information meaningful. How can you motivate reluctant readers with regards to self-expectation and self-efficacy? First, ask students to describe what they believe they are good at in relation to the content area being taught. Second, ask students to describe what kind of reader or writer they are. Third, ask students to explain how they have learned best in the past. Fourth, ask students to describe goals that they have set for themselves in relation to the content you're teaching. Students should write letters to you sometime near the beginning of the course and periodically through the course to cover these 4 points. One way to activate prior knowledge and interest in the subject to be studied that day is to use pre-reading strategies. It is important to activate students' interest in the reading material before you start reading. Having students open the textbook and start reading the chapter is not a wise way to begin your content area lesson. Pique students' interest in what's coming and they will read with more enthusiasm, attention, and thought. Research has found that not having pre-reading strategies is related to reading difficulty for students, even those who are literate. Pre-reading strategies are also a form of pre-assessment. Pre-reading strategies can be generally divided into one of 3 types of pre-reading strategies. These are arousing curiosity, making prediction, and question generalization. Curiosity arousal gives students the chance to consider what they know already about the material to be read. Prediction strategies activate thought about the content before reading. Teaching students to generate their own questions about material to be read is an important instructional goal. Using different individual strategies in all 3 of these overall categories helps students understand the content area subjects they are reading. While there are many different pre-reading strategies, this mini lecture will focus on story impressions, guided imagery, pre-P procedure, anticipation guides, imagine, elaborate, predict, and confirm, active comprehension, request, expectation outlines, and KWL charts. Using story impressions is an instructional strategy that arouses curiosity and allows students to anticipate story content. In story impressions, you give the students clues from the text in a chronological order and have students fill in the details. Fragments from the story, in the form of clue words and phrases, enable readers to form an overall impression of how the characters and events interact in the story. Here are the suggested steps for introducing story impressions to your classroom for the first time. 1. Introduce a strategy. 2. Use large newsprint, a transparency, or smartboard to show students the story chain. 3. Read the clues together and explain how the arrows link one clue to another in logical order. 4. Demonstrate how to write a story guess. 5. Invite the students to read the actual story silently or initiate a shared reading experience. 6. For subsequent stories, use story impressions to have students write individual story predictions. Students' ability to visualize what they are reading is an important component for developing comprehension. Guided imagery can be a means for building an experience base for inquiry, discussion, and group work, exploring and stretching concepts, solving and clarifying problems, exploring history and the future, and exploring other lands and worlds. Guided imagery provides an instructional option to help students connect what they see in their mind's eye to what they will study. Brainstorming is a key feature of the pre-reading plan, also called the pre-P procedure. Before starting the activity, you choose keywords, phrases, or pictures that introduce the topic. Then, when using the plan with students, follow the three-phase plan. The first step of the pre-P procedure is to have the students brainstorm the main concept. For example, if you were teaching Indiana history, you might say, "Tell me anything that comes to mind when you hear the word Indiana." During the first phase, students find associations between the key concept and their prior knowledge. In the second step, students are asked, "What made you think of?" the response given by the student. This helps to build metacognitive awareness by developing awareness of their network of associations. Students, while listening to others' associations, can weigh, reject, accept, revise, and integrate some of the ideas that came to mind. In the last step, you ask the students, "Based on our discussion and before we read the text, have you any new ideas about," in the previous example, "Indiana?" Here students verbalize the ideas that have been elaborated or changed through discussion. An anticipation guide is a list of statements you generate about a subject to which your students react before they read about it. As you talk about their beliefs and knowledge, you can encourage your students to connect what they will learn with what they already claim to know. Anticipation guides stimulate students to reflect on their beliefs because they present several debatable statements about a topic. Therefore, anticipation guides are the most helpful pre-reading technique when trying to get students to think about a controversial topic. To create an anticipation guide, read the text and identify key concepts you would like your students to understand, challenge, or both. Then compose 6 to 8 statements that are likely to change your students' belief about a topic or express an opinion about it. Next, arrange the statements in a true-false format. Then ask students to complete the guide individually before reading the text to which it relates. Now, before reading, you can have students discuss their responses. Then have students read the material. Finally, ask students to review their responses to the anticipation guide when they complete their reading of the text material. You can even have them compare their post-reading thoughts with those in the anticipation guide. This is an example of an anticipation guide for a Civil War lesson. The directions state, Johnny Reb and Billy Yank are common soldiers of the Civil War. You will be reading about some of their basic differences in your textbook. What do you think those differences will be? Before reading your assignment, place the initials JR in front of the phrases that you think describe Johnny Reb. Place the initials BY in front of the statement that describes Billy Yank. Do not mark statements common to both. There are other examples in your course textbooks. The Imagine, Elaborate, Predict, and Confirm strategy helps students visualize as they read, which struggling readers have difficulty doing. To conduct the IEPC, first read a passage that contains content appropriate for developing imagery. In the Imagine step, have students close their eyes and imagine a scene from the text they are going to read, and once they have the image, share it with classmates. In the Elaborate step, once they have heard other initial responses, have them think of additional details associated with the scene they have visualized. In the Predict step, have students use the initial and elaborated images to make predictions about the text they are going to read. Finally, in the Confirm step, have students recall their predictions while and after reading. Request, sometimes called reciprocal teaching, encourages students to ask their own questions about the content material under study. There are 4 steps to the request strategy. First, read the text silently with the students. Second, the students question the teacher about the passage. Third, the teacher asks students questions about the passage. Do this for several segments of text before making predictions about the rest of the text. Students then read independently before the class discussion of the text. Your modeling of this strategy is essential. The use of an expectation outline helps students ask questions about text. The expectation outline is best used for factual material, but can be adapted to narrative studies as well. If students are reading a factual selection, first give them several minutes to preview the material. Then ask, what do you think our reading assignment is going to be about? Develop the outline from student responses on the chalkboard or projector as students simply tell what they expect to learn from reading the selection. Ask the students to state their expectations in the form of questions. As they suggest questions, group related questions on the chalkboard or projector. Once questions have been asked and grouped, the class labels each set of questions. Through discussions, students begin to see the major topics that will emerge from the reading. Help them to recognize that gaps may exist in the expectation outline of the assignment. On completion of the outline, students read to answer the questions generated. The KWL chart is a popular graphic organizer that can be used before, during, or after reading a text selection. To make the chart, divide paper into 3 equal sections and label the first know, the middle want, and the last learned. Before reading the selected text, students fill in the know section with everything they already know about the topic being studied. Then they fill in the want part with what they want to know about the topic. After reading the text, or even while reading the text, have students return to the chart and complete the learned section with any new information they learned or the answers to their want to knows. The closed procedure is both an activity, an assessment, and a readability test. To create a closed procedure, remove random words such as every 5th word from a passage, including non-essential words. Make sure to leave the first and last sentence intact. You will need 50 blanks to use the close as a readability test. Students fill in the blanks as best they can. For a readability test or assessment, only exactly correct answers are counted. Synonyms are incorrect. If the passage is at the independent level for the student, he or she will have a score of 60% or higher. If the student scores lower than 40%, the passage is at the frustration level for the student. To use the closed procedure as an ungraded pre-reading strategy, remove vocabulary words or key concept words from the text passage. Students fill in the blanks as before. Students can then self-check and compare how they did in comparison to the text reading. For some students, a word bank may be provided. It can be used as a post-reading activity to assess whether students have retained the material or if reteaching is necessary. Take some time to think about which of these pre-reading strategies works best for you and your content area. Do you see any potential difficulties with implementing these activities? Which pre-reading strategies do you like best? There are more strategies than those shown in this mini lecture. I recommend that you get a copy of the pictured 50 Literacy Strategies Step by Step.